It began with a sound, a deep, hollow groan rolling through the ice like the earth itself was mourning. They say it happened just after midnight, when the wind in northern Siberia falls dead still, and the stars above hang cold and merciless, staring down like ancient witnesses to forgotten sins. In the dark silence of the Kolyma Range, far beyond the reach of modern maps, a research drone lost its signal. Not a rare thing in that wilderness, but what it captured in its final moments, that was rare. Too rare. A fractured image, a black stone arch protruding from a split in the glacier, a man-shaped shadow far too large, and then static. The footage never made the news. The team who recovered the drone, contractors working with the Russian Ministry of Arctic Resources, were sworn to secrecy. But one man spoke. His name was Valentin Petrov, geologist, 47 years old, divorced, lived alone in a dim apartment in Yakutsk, lined with bookshelves that sagged with forgotten histories. Valentin didn't believe in fairy tales until the ice opened up. He described it once in a taped interview that was never meant to be released. You can still find it online, sometimes, on forums that disappear overnight. His voice trembles in that video, not with fear, with reverence. "I walked into the tomb," he says, "and it felt like I was walking into the mouth of something not dead, just waiting." He wasn't supposed to be there. The site had been quarantined, no-fly zone, restricted access. But Valentin had followed the coordinates burned into his mind from that last drone transmission. He trekked 6 days across frozen waste to find it. And what he found was not stone, not bone, but something in between. The tomb was carved into the glacier itself, impossibly smooth, like ice that had been melted from within, not chipped or broken. Inside, torches lit themselves with a strange blue flame. No one has been able to explain that part. Valentin called it the breath of the ancients. But it was what lay at the center of that icy chamber that stole his words, and perhaps his sanity. A figure, frozen beneath the clear floor of the tomb. Not a statue, not a corpse, a body. Tall, 13 feet at least, draped in blackened gold. Its skin was gray, not rotted, preserved, like it had never truly died. Its eyes were open. He stayed there for 2 hours, watching it, waiting for it to move. And when he returned, he was never the same. Nobody believes what he saw. Nobody wants to, because if he's right, then everything we know about human history, myth, and the very fabric of what we are collapses. You have to understand something about that region, northeastern Siberia. It's one of the most isolated places on Earth. The native Evenki people speak of beings who came before men. They call them Yalgun, not spirits, not gods, but giants. Keepers of the old earth, wielders of forgotten language, hunters of the stars. The elders say the Yalgun built cities beneath the mountains, then sealed themselves away when the sky turned red. They believed the world had become too noisy, too angry, too small. So they slept. That was always just a story, until Valentin walked into that tomb. He was silenced quickly. Institutional leave, discreditation, a quiet mental health review. Typical. But then, weeks later, the second signal emerged. A glaciologist named Dr. Simone Lark, part of a British research delegation, reported seismic anomalies just 3 kilometers from Valentin's last known GPS location. The ice remembers. It remembers what we do not, because it is older than books, older than bones, older than the first human lie. It is a vault, a breathless, blue-white crypt holding things we were never meant to know. And it is melting. Not because of carbon, not just from warming winds or shifting seas, but because something beneath it has begun to stir. Back in 1958, during the Cold War, a Soviet survey team disappeared in that same region. Their mission? To map new uranium routes for extraction. The records were vague, purposely so, but declassified documents decades later revealed something chilling. One final radio transmission from their lead officer. It is not a mine, it is a mouth. And then, silence. The search party found nothing. No tents, no equipment, no bodies. Just a massive depression in the snow, like something enormous had risen, then walked away. That file was buried, redacted. Hypothermia and avalanche was the official cause. But one of the search members kept a journal. In a cracked, leather-bound notebook, faded by frost and time, he wrote a line that gives some people nightmares to this day. The footsteps were walking out, not in. The Soviets built a steel fence across a 10-mile perimeter after that. No entry, no patrols, just silence. What were they afraid of? Some believe it was a creature, others a curse. But the locals, the elders, they whisper of something deeper. They say the tomb was not made by giants, it was made for one. A prison, a coffin, or maybe a seed, left in the soil of ice, waiting for a warmer world. Not all giants in old myths were noble, not all were guardians. Some were destroyers, children of the deep earth, born not to build, but to remind the sky that it too could bleed. Ancient texts, rarely translated, speak of a figure known only as Thamragul, the one who waits beneath, always described the same way. Eyes like frozen suns, skin like storm cloud stone, and hands that could shape mountains like wet clay. A legend in Sumer, whispered in Nordic runes, carved into Andean rock. The same name, the same form, appearing across continents and centuries that were never supposed to connect. How could that be? Did all these civilizations hallucinate the same monster? Or were they trying to warn each other? In the Book of Enoch, banned from the Bible, buried in apocryphal shadows, there is a chilling passage. And among the watchers there was one who fell too deep, chained in frost till the stars weep. Some say this was metaphor. Others are not so sure anymore, because there are patterns, cycles, Every 6,000 years, massive climate shifts open parts of the Earth that have remained closed for millennia. Ice retreats, caves reappear, old bones thaw, and with them come stories. Recently, a mountaineer in the Altai Mountains reported a howling wind that wasn't wind, a moaning, not human, not animal, low, endless. A sound that made his climbing partner vomit, then scream, then go silent. They left the mountain and never returned. But days later, hikers posted photographs. Massive handprints pressed into stone. Not snow, stone. As though fingers like stone themselves had tried to claw free from something old. Yakutsk fell into its longest winter the year after Valentin disappeared. The streets froze early. Birds vanished. Dogs barked at corners where nothing stood. But those who had heard the rumors, the whispers of the tomb, began to report a strange dream. Always the same, a long corridor of ice, a heartbeat pulsing through the floor, and a voice, not heard, but felt, vibrating inside the skull like a tuning fork made of fear. The locals called it the calling. Most shrugged it off as coincidence, hysteria fed by legends. But in small villages near the Kolyma River, something else happened. Children began drawing figures, tall ones, with hollow eyes and long arms that hung down to the knees. One girl, Anna, only 6 years old, drew a picture of her house on fire. Next to it stood a giant. When her mother asked what it was, she whispered, "The man from under the cold." She said he told her the earth was changing, that soon the sky would crack, that the forgotten would return. The drawings were dismissed by doctors. Imaginative children, they said, raised on ghost stories. But then Anna disappeared. They found her footprints outside the house. They led to the edge of the forest. But there, beside hers, were others. Enormous ones, pressed deep into the snow. 9 toes, each wider than her head. The authorities said wolves. They always say wolves. But the family never spoke publicly again, moved away, vanished like so many who get too close. Meanwhile, the glacier continued to melt, faster than models predicted, as if something beneath was warming the ice from inside, as if it was waking up. Satellite imaging began to pick up strange anomalies. Ridges in the ice that weren't there before, geometric patterns, like hallways, like structures. A French data analyst leaked the files, posted them online with one cryptic caption, "Not erosion, architecture." It lasted 2 hours before it was taken down. The analyst? Missing, presumed suicide. But the images survived. And those who study the old myths, the ones the universities ignore, knew what they were looking at. Not just a tomb, a city. Hidden beneath the ice, a city older than the pyramids. A city not built for human hands. The legends of the Yulgun say they didn't just vanish, they sank. Not into water, but into time. Lowered into the ground by forces forgotten, encased in ice to sleep until the red echo would call them back. What is the red echo? Some think it means war. Some say climate disaster. Others, believe it's a cosmic signal, a pulse, an alignment of stars that only returns every 13,000 years. And now it returns. Astronomers in Peru, in Mongolia, in the Canadian Yukon all began to notice an identical anomaly in the night sky. A ripple, a deep, low-frequency signal that doesn't originate from any star or pulsar. It comes from here, from beneath. The old epics speak of giants not as solitary monsters, but as races, kingdoms, nations of colossi who once ruled the mountain passes, spoke to the skies, drank rivers dry. But something happened. A war? A pact? A betrayal? No one agrees. But all the stories end the same way. The earth took them and made them wait. And now, one has stirred. Remember Luca, the reindeer herder? Weeks before he vanished for good, he left a final message on his tape recorder, a trembling whisper recorded beneath a storm. He said, "I saw it again. Somewhere deep beneath the frost, beneath a mountain whose name has been lost to time, a heart that should not beat, beats still, slow, distant, older than language. And perhaps it is not a heart at all. Perhaps it is something stranger, something we do not have a word for, only a rhythm, a call. Because truth, real truth, does not arrive with thunder. It arrives like snow, quiet, layered, unnoticed, until it buries everything. In the forests near Colima, where no birds sing, there are now places where the trees bend towards something unseen, where the air tastes metallic, where animals will not walk. Places where compasses lose their way, not because of magnetism, but because the earth remembers. And memory, when disturbed, grows teeth. One local elder, the last speaker of a forgotten dialect, was interviewed by a foreign journalist in 2012. She had lived 93 years in silence. When asked about the tomb, her face darkened. She said, in a voice that cracked like ice, "You think it died? It did not die. It listened." Then she whispered one final word. "It waits." The tomb, if that's what it truly was, remains sealed to most. But the thawing continues. Every year the barrier weakens. Every spring the skeleton breathes deeper. And if there is more beneath, if there are others waiting in that slumbering city of stone and ice, then we are not on the edge of discovery. We are on the edge of inheritance, a return. We were taught the myths were stories, that giants were symbols, that folklore was fiction. But what if we were wrong? What if they were not warnings of what was, but what will be? A cycle forgotten, a reckoning delayed. And when it happens, not if, but when, no army, no wall, no explanation will be enough, because belief will be too late. We built cities over their bones. We paved roads atop their burial grounds. We mocked the stories, called them fairy tales. But the earth keeps its secrets, and some secrets keep themselves alive. Some say the greatest fear is the unknown, but they are wrong. The greatest fear is the truth that waited patiently in silence, The truth that watched us dig and burn and forget. The truth that knows we no longer believe in it, because that is when it moves. That is when it returns. Nobody believes what was found in the frozen giant's tomb. But maybe the tomb wasn't opened to reveal something to us. Maybe it was opened so they could remember who they were, and remember what we did. The ice cracks, the bones shift, and in the stillness of the deep tundra night, something ancient opens its eyes.